Hello there, my name is Roy Ludwig, and I created this channel to help gamers enjoy gaming again. Yeah? First of all, this is my first attempt at an educational type video, and the way I want to present these topics I will talk about is more relaxed. Yeah, I don't want this to be like a lecture in university or in school. I personally learn the best when I sit in a circle with a group of friends and someone just talks about his experience with something. Yeah? So these videos are meant to be listened to rather than actively watched. So feel free to just listen and think about how what I'm about to say relates to your own experience. So, like I said, the main focus of this channel is to help gamers enjoy gaming again. And one thing that kept me from enjoying video games for a long time was video game addiction. When I was first introduced to video games, they immediately hooked me. But it took a while for it to turn into an addiction. Like with any addiction, really. There were times when I played 14 plus hours each day and I skipped a lot of school for gaming. At first, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I could play the same game every single day and I would not burn out. Yeah. The amount of joy was unlike anything else I ever had. With time, though, it started to be less and less enjoyable to play games. I needed to play more and more to get the same or a lower amount of joy out of it. I reached a point at which I felt extremely empty, yeah, and kinda emotionally numb. It was at this point that I first realized that I had a problem, but I couldn't stop doing it. Yeah, not because gaming itself was so much fun. Actually, it became a chore to do it. Yeah, but doing anything else was so unbelievably boring and even stressful that it became very exhausting to do anything else. Yet gaming itself felt very exhausting too. I couldn't play just one game anymore. I had to cycle through many different games in order to stay content and entertained. It was madness. Yeah? You can tell me in the comments, by the way, if you find this experience to be something you are familiar with. Yeah, I guess you clicked on this video because you have a similar problem. Maybe you are in a video game addiction currently, or you feel like you are about to become addicted. After spending years in this state of just playing to play, not to enjoy, but in order to not do anything else, there was one emotion that came up despite my emotional numbness. And that emotion, as you might have guessed already, was shame. Yeah? I started to feel very ashamed of my inability to moderate my gaming hours. Obviously, I started struggling with grades in school. It became so bad that I started ignoring my physical health in order to play more video games. Yeah, and I'm confident enough to admit that I stopped taking showers or even brush my teeth just to play more and more video games. I knew I had to stop. I really wanted to, but I just couldn't get myself to do it. Yeah? So I did what probably a lot of people in this situation do, and I looked for help on the internet. I was looking for advice on YouTube, just like you are doing right now. Yeah, I was reading books, listening to podcasts. I tried to get as much information as I could. And I found out that so much of the advice I heard didn't work at all. Most of the advice I heard and saw was to just do it. Yeah? All of you have heard this. Just do it. Yeah? A lot of guides included increasing willpower in order to get out of an addiction. And I found this strategy to be extremely exhausting, and I often found myself getting into a burnout, which meant that I started playing even more than before. Yeah, in order to distract myself from the burnout. This was obviously very frustrating and made me feel even more hopeless. I was really starting to believe that I'm just too lazy or just too weak to get out of it. Lucky for me, I started experimenting a lot myself. Yeah, and I realized that some very important things are to be found in studying the human mind. So, I started watching my mind. I started observing my behavior and noticed some things that helped me quite a lot. The first thing I notice is that emotions drive my behavior much, much better than willpower or logic and reasoning ever did. It didn't matter how much I knew that gaming 24/7 isn't good, or how much other people told me to stop. I couldn't stop doing it, even though I had all the logical facts to stop. That didn't matter, yeah? I also noticed that I could get burned out by playing video games, and that during those times I usually just looked for pleasure and entertainment in other places, like scrolling through YouTube all day long. I also noticed that when I got into a burnout, the frequency of me thinking about video games dropped significantly, and my mostly negative thoughts, things like worry and self-doubt, increased. So there was a link between the frequency of my gaming-related thoughts and my motivation to play them. Interesting, right? The more I thought about a video game, the more I wanted to play it. Yeah? The more I thought about other things, the less I wanted to play video games. Then I realized something even more important. When I am fully absorbed in a game, when I literally focus only on the game, then my mind felt content, even happy. I could enjoy a game as if it was the first time playing video games. There was also one thing I noticed that was extremely unsettling. When I did very little, when I had the most distracting thoughts, when my mind wasn't focused at all, I felt extremely exhausted while making much less progress than if I were to be focused on one thing at a time. So I realized that my exhaustion could be very intense even in the absence of productivity. That wasn't a good thing to discover, at least not for now. I learned that in order to get out of my video game addiction, I had to understand my emotions deeply and train my focus. I never even bothered trying to get disciplined or have more willpower. So, before I get to my tips on how to get out of video game addiction, I have to say that I'm no psychologist, okay? I have no degree in psychology. I'm just a random guy on the internet telling you something about his experience with video game addiction. So I just want to say it would be a good idea to test out what I say before thinking it's true. Okay? You inevitably have to do this anyway, because if you don't test out stuff yourself, you will inherently do something that is not the best thing to do for you. Yeah? Because my advice can't be helpful for every single one of you watching this video. Humans are inherently different, and there is no one solution that works for everyone. Now, let's get to how to get out of a video game addiction. The first thing you have to do is to process emotions. Emotions are inherently temporary. If you are aware of them, yeah? Emotions that are buried in your subconscious mind can't be processed and become stuck. So you have to become aware of them in order to process them. That is why people who are addicted to video games can't stop. Yeah? Your problem isn't that you have too little motivation. Your problem is that you have too much motivation to keep playing games. So, increasing willpower doesn't really work. Yeah? And the emotion that might drive this behavior can be any emotion, really. For example, it could be an intolerance of boredom, or a way to suppress trauma. It could also be a way to feel like you make progress in life even though you don't really do. Whatever emotion is driving the behavior needs to be processed first. For me personally, it was both an intolerance of boredom and a way to cope with traumas. Once I processed my traumas and built my tolerance with boredom, I felt no craving to play video games anymore. I lost this insatiable hunger for playing video games. Obviously, I didn't stop playing them completely if you've watched any of my streams. But it went from 13 to 14 plus hours each day to 3 to 4 hours every other day, which is much less, obviously. And it became even less the more I could do other things that were too boring for me before I did that. Now, you might ask yourself, but how do I process emotions? How do I increase my tolerance of boredom so that you can actually get out of feeling stuck? Yeah, that you can actually move out of this addiction. So, in order for your mind to process something, it has to be aware of it. When you feel very good playing a video game that doesn't last forever, right? the beginning of an addiction doesn't feel like the later stages of an addiction, right? The pleasure drops significantly. That is because your mind automatically processes anything that is in your active consciousness. You don't even need to do anything. All you have to do is avoid a distraction. If you're distracted, you aren't aware of everything. Yeah? So what I did, I took walks without music. I was sitting in front of a wall for an hour straight. When I was using a train or a bus, I wasn't scrolling through my phone. Yeah, I wasn't listening to music non-stop. I just looked out of the window. Now, in the beginning, that was hell on earth. Yeah, and any of you who have done something similar will probably know how this feels. Because all of the emotions that I suppressed with gaming and distractions in general came back with full power. So my mind was going crazy. Yeah, I felt extremely restless and stressed. But like I said, any emotion is temporary if you're aware of it. And with time, the intensity of the emotion and the negative thoughts dropped, and with them dropped the craving to play video games. Since boredom wasn't a problem for me anymore, why would I have to play video games constantly? When I processed my traumas, I felt no need to suppress negative emotions with gaming anymore. Now, how did I increase my focus to get more control over my thoughts? I used a certain meditation, yeah? And it works like this. I took an object, and it can be any object really, doesn't matter. And I looked at it for 5 minutes straight, without blinking. Again, with time, I got better at focusing. And the better I could focus, the better I got at keeping my motivation high. When I focused on an activity and only thought about it, then my motivation towards doing this activity was high. Not only that, but the joy and pleasure I could derive from that activity was much higher too. When my mind is on one point, it is content. Yeah? You probably know this feeling of being in a state of flow or flow state. It feels really good, right? Now, are you thinking about a million different things at the same time when you're in a flow state? No. You're fully focused on one thing. And this feeling you have when you're in the flow state, that is what I call bliss. Yeah? So to summarize, you have to process your emotions. Go for a walk. Sit in front of a wall. When you're waiting for something, don't listen to music non-stop or use your phone. Avoid distractions. This also helps you to increase your focus, and this will help you control your motivation more and also your joy. A focused mind is a content mind. Okay, so there's obviously a million more things to say about this topic, but I don't want this video to be too long. I want this to be an introduction to the problem of how to get out of video games. I will make more videos related to anything that helps gamers enjoy gaming again. You can also join my new Discord server to ask any questions. I will try to answer as many of them as I can. But not just me, anyone with experience can answer them. I want my Discord server to be a community where everyone can help each other. So, I wish you good luck getting out of your video game addiction, and I will see you next time.